Hey, John with Simple Property Management here. Today we're going to talk about renting out your home for the first time in 2024. We're going to talk about um, if you should accept pets, city inspections, HOAs, what happens with taxes and insurance, what about maintenance, utilities, who handles what, evictions, and then, of course, some pros and cons at the end. So, what I always like to start is firstly, are you going to accept pets? Before you even decide yes or no, you really want to think about are you going to accept pets if you rent it out? Because if you decide yes, then that may change how you get the property on the market. You might put vinyl plank down instead of carpet. You might put carpet down, but you might use a waterproof pad, things like that. So we see anywhere from 50 to 75% in stats that we've seen, 50 to 75% of prospects that are looking for a property have pets. So accepting pets can actually raise what you can get for rent because there are not as many properties out there that will accept pets. Accepting pets also lowers your chances of having lease issues later on down the line. So if a tenant does sneak in a pet, if you already decided, yep, we will accept a pet, then you just charge them their pet fees, things like that, send them a lease violation letter, but you'll be able to move on. As opposed to if you don't accept pets, then the question is, are you going to evict them over a pet? And that can be challenging with courts and things like that. But also know people that have pets typically stay at your property longer because there are not as many properties that are pet friendly out there that they can rent. City inspections and HOAs, one of the fun ones with the government. So a lot of cities around us, West Michigan, have city inspections. Grand Rapids is, I would say, the most in-depth city inspection because they look at the property maintenance code, the International Property Maintenance Code. They have also passed a lead where you have to test for lead at city certification or city inspection. Now that has actually been pushed off because what they say needs to be done for the lead testing is different than what the state for state certified lead testers, what the state says to do. So that's been pushed off, but they're definitely the most in depth, and they're obviously trying to pass more and more um, things with rental inspections. What's another one? Source of income bills, things like that. Wyoming, Kentwood, Gaines Township, Allendale, Hastings, Ionia. Those are some markets that we serve that have city inspections. There are, I'm sure, some that we missed. This is just kind of a quick and dirty list of cities around us that do city inspections. If you are in an HOA or a condo association, you're going to want to check and see, can you rent out your property? And if you can, are there any additional costs? So for example, one condo that we've managed had like $100 every year. They had to re-register that property with the association. It was $100 every year. So then you have to look at who pays that, who pays the association dues. Typically, the owner or landlord does pay those dues instead of relying on the resident to pay the dues. All right, let's get into taxes and insurance. Your taxes are going to go up. If you've been living in the property, then your taxes are probably going to go up anywhere from 40 to 50%. If you just purchased the home, though, your taxes are going to come uncapped and then they're going to go up an additional 40 to 50% because your property is going 0% homestead. So what you see if you just bought the property, what you see on the listing for taxes is going to be different than what your taxes actually are because they're coming uncapped. So we have a link right here that you can go to. You can also just Google the State of Michigan Property Tax Estimator. That's a good place that we go to look at, okay, here's the property, here's the SEV, the school district, all of those items, and then it'll spit out what the estimated tax is at 0% homestead, which would be a rental property. All right, you're going to want to also check with your insurance agent for insurance for a property that's being rented out. That will probably change from what you have right now. We always kind of say you don't want to go with the cheapest. You want something that insures you for the coverages that your insurance agent thinks that you should have. And then we also sometimes will suggest getting an umbrella policy to cover you for more liability, because renting out a property can be litigious. People can fall down the stairs, they slip on the ice out front, they sprain their ankle on your property. So you really want to make sure you're covered there. One thing that people forget about is I think they forget about maintenance. Yes, things may not have been broken in your home in the last 2 years, but things do happen, and it's not always the tenant's fault. The most common issues we see outside of your general maintenance, door hinges that are loose, door handles that are loose, that we of course try to get the tenant to tighten up a doorknob, but just general maintenance items. Outside of that, our biggest maintenance category, so to speak, would be HVAC and plumbing. Um, and then you're going to want to make sure you have some type of reserve to cover these items. And we'll talk about how big that reserve should be as we get to talking about evictions, but you want a reserve. You're probably looking at a few months reserve for rainy day eviction, tenant doesn't pay, larger expenses, but you also need a budget separately for your capital expenses. So HVAC, heating, cooling, air conditioning, which is cool, which is cooling, plumbing, things like that that are going to break. Those larger ticket items, water heater, appliances, roof. Maybe your siding right now is wood siding and you need to side that with vinyl siding one day. Flooring, new paint throughout the property. Those are larger capital expenses that you want to be budgeting for separately from what your day-to-day maintenance items are. All right, utilities. This is a big one. If it if it's like a duplex or larger and the utilities are split, then you should have the tenant pay those utilities directly to the utility company. On a single family home for water, we do suggest putting the water in your name or our name if we're going to manage it, and then billing the tenant back, because when you bill the tenant back, you make sure it gets paid. Whereas if the tenant directly pays that bill to the city, if they don't pay it, well, the water bill stays with the property. So you can be stuck with a very, very large bill. The only thing is you cannot split a bill amongst two residents, two units, if they're not individually metered. So if you have, let's say, water at a duplex, you cannot split that bill 50-50 between the two units. Some people do it, but it's illegal. You're better off just saying your rent is, let's say, 1,000, and then every month you also pay $40 water bill or water charge, and then that goes to pay the water. We don't love that idea. We just rather say it's 1,040 right up front and then go from there. And then you're not worried about any of these other monthly charges. Landscaping, single family home, typically the tenant's going to take care of the landscaping, except for some landlords really want that property to sparkle when people drive by. And at that point, then you're going to want to hire your own landscaping person. Snow removal, we kind of say, don't worry about snow removal. Let the tenant handle that, especially on a single family home. Most duplexes, the tenant can handle that. And if you have a larger property that has its own parking lot, things like that, then you are going to probably have to take care of that on your own. But if you just have, like, let's say a duplex, one little parking area, then the tenants can take care of that. That's also going to help you liability wise if somebody, or it could help you. I'm not an attorney, but it could help you liability wise if somebody slips and falls in the winter months. You want to make sure that you're planning for the tenant not paying, because I don't care what anybody says, the tenant is not always going to pay their rent on time 100% of the time. The best thing you can do is have a manager that has very good application standards in that they actually run the applications. If you are renting it out yourself, you're going to want to make sure you actually run the applications. Don't just take an application, go off gut feel, or I don't know what's if their vehicle's dirty or not, if their breath smells, if their hair's red. Just don't even worry about any of that. Run the application, have your application standards, and stick to them. Like I said, your tenant's not going to pay all the time, every time. So you do want to make sure you have a few months of rent stocked away for those types of issues. And that also can be used for, when your furnace goes out on a Saturday and it's an $800 fix, you can pay for that right out of that um, little side piggy bank that you have going on there. Evictions, those can take a long time. They can get ugly. So you want to be planning for that. This will kind of be area dependent. Now, Grand Rapids, we're getting into court. Typically, right now, it seems like it's anywhere from 5 to 7 or 8 weeks, sometimes a little quicker, sometimes a little slower. But in other areas, it can be longer. I know Muskegon, we don't manage in Muskegon, but I've heard from other landlords that it takes a long time to get in there. Well, at that point, then your reserve for maintenance and evictions and things like that is going to need to be larger. They can get ugly, like I said. Tenants moving out or he's getting evicted on their way out. They, pop holes in the walls. They're leave a bunch of stuff left behind. They let their dog or pet urinate everywhere. So things can get ugly with that. You want to make sure that you have that reserve. Some people even want more than a few month reserve to cover that kind of stuff, and I don't blame them. All right, we're going to talk about the pros and the cons, but I figured it would be better to start with cons first, and we'll end on a positive. So finding reliable tenants that pay, take care of the property, can be challenging. It can take a little while. So right now, if you're in the winter months in Michigan, then it can be very, very challenging to find residents between, we'll call it Halloween to the first of the year, even past the first of the year a little bit, depending on when tax returns and all that stuff comes back. They may cause damage to your property. They don't always pay on time or pay at all. It's a business. This is the way you need to think about it. It's a business. So in a business, you have times that a tenant or your customer pays, everything goes well, and you have some times where the customer doesn't pay and things don't go well. So you just want to keep that in mind. It is a business. Maintenance costs can be high at times. Again, that kind of comes down to um, what's going on with inflation. So maintenance costs through COVID really went higher. Is the part, let's say it's a furnace, is the part a special part for that exact furnace, or can they put in just a general blower motor in there that'll work for multiple different furnaces? But they can be high. You can also have 5 months where you don't have any maintenance issues, and then the next 3 months can just be heck for maintenance issues. So you want to be able to kind of take that up and down with maintenance costs going up and down. You're the complaint department, or we are if you hire us. But if you're doing this yourself, dealing with complaints, repair requests, payment issues, evictions, uh, what else would you have? Lease issues, those can be time consuming and very stressful. So you want to take that into account. Some people, they're moving out of the home that they were raised in, and they just can't handle the thought of somebody, covering up grandma's mural that was on the wall. And you probably don't want to rent your property out if you are that attached to the property still. The rental market can be challenging, just like I just said. In the winter months, it can be challenging. We've also seen an influx of new properties hitting the market this past summer, late summer into fall and winter. So more properties on the market means higher supply. So it's kind of the whole supply and demand thing. Rents have retracted a little bit. So you just want to plan and know that that could happen. Now let's talk about the good things with renting out your property. You're going to have typically over the long haul period of time, you're going to have consistent cash flow mostly every month. Again, if you have a rental property long enough, you're going to have an issue at some point. But if you are running your application correctly, you have standards, you're going to have typically a nice steady supply of cash flow. Your property is going to appreciate. So as the tenant is paying down that mortgage, most months, not always, but your property is going to appreciate every year. So you are putting very little money, hopefully, into this property when it's rented out. and it's just going to keep going up in value. There are a lot of tax benefits and tax deductions for rental properties. I would always say defer to your CPA on that, but there are a lot of things. Basically any rental expense can be written off on your taxes. But again, talk to your tax advisor about that. This is also a nice hedge against inflation. During COVID, we saw inflation go crazy, but we also saw rents go appreciate pretty quickly. I think at one point it was 10% appreciation in rents. So it's a very, very good hedge against inflation. So thanks for watching. And if you have any questions about the items we went over today, please go ahead and contact me, John with Simple Property Management. Thanks for watching.